Welcome to part 4 of my Security Plus 701 practice exam series. In this video, I answered 20 realistic Security Plus practice exam questions in real time. Now, these questions are not from the actual exam. They're going to be questions that are formatted in a very similar way to what you should expect to see on the actual exam. The purpose of this video is to see my thought process in real time while answering these questions, as I believe that is helpful for anyone trying to pass the exam. All right, enough talking. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Welcome to part 4 of the Security Plus 701 practice exam series. Like always, for your convenience, I'll add question timestamps to the description below, so you can go ahead and skip around if you would like. But let's go ahead and jump right into question 1. Question 1. A security analyst is assessing the potential risks to a company's critical systems. They want to quantify the chance of specific threats, such as ransomware attack, from occurring. Which concept should they use to express this numerical chance? A, probability, B, impact, C, likelihood, or D, threshold? Okay, so for this question, something important to point out is the fact that it's looking for an answer that can be measured by a number. And I know that because it specifically says quantify the chance. So once you understand that, the question will become a lot easier to answer, actually. So let's go ahead and go through it here. Impact is going to be the measurement of severity of a specific threat. And threshold is more of a predefined value, right? So I'm going to rule those out. And between probability and likelihood, they're both very similar. But actually probability addresses the likelihood based on a numeric chance. It's like part of the definition. So that directly answers this question here. So I'm going to go with A, probability. Probability is the most appropriate concept for quantifying the numerical chance of a specific event occurring in risk analysis. It provides a clear and measurable metric for assessing the likelihood of potential threats. Question 2. A company believes an insider might be stealing sensitive data. To catch them, they create a fake piece of data that looks important but is actually a trap. If this fake data is accessed or transferred, it will trigger an alert. What type of technology does this best describe? A, collision, B, honey net, C, honey pot, or D, honey token? All right, that's a lot of honeys there, huh? I'm gonna right away rule out collision. I'm gonna start with that. In the exam objectives, collision refers to like when two different inputs produce the same hash value. So for this doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to rule that out. But let's go ahead and talk about the different honeys. Let's start with honeypot here. So a honeypot is like a decoy network or system that's goal is to deceive attackers by making it look like a legit system or network, as an example. And a honey net is going to be a collection of honeypots. So it's a lot or more than one honeypot, and you'll have a honey net. So then you have a honey token, and a honey token is a piece of data that is set up to be a decoy. So think of it as like a honey pot, but a single piece of data. And it's set up to detect unauthorized access or exfiltration. So the best answer I'm going to go with is D, honey token. A honey token is the most appropriate technique for detecting insider threats in this scenario. It's a subtle and effective way to catch those who might be trying to steal sensitive information. Question 3. A company is implementing a new software system. To ensure a smooth transition, they need to involve serious individuals and groups who have a stake in the outcome. What is the primary role of these stakeholders in the change management process? A, advocating for their interests and the organization's success. B, assessing the potential impact of the change. C, validating the effectiveness of the change. Or D, taking ownership of the change. Okay, I would say for this one, you actually don't really need to read the entire description or the scenario. It's all mostly fluff here. I mean, the question alone, so what is the primary role of these stakeholders in the change management process? That's all you need. So I'm going to go with A, advocating for their interests and the organization's success. But let's look at the other answers. B, that's going to be done by developers or other techs on the project, but not stakeholders. They wouldn't do that. For C, validating the effectiveness of the change, that's going to be usually done by members or roles such as QA, so quality assurance, or testers, right? Beta testers, essentially. And then you have D, taking ownership of the change. And that's going to be more so for a project manager type of role. But I'm going to go with A. Stakeholders play a critical role in the change management process by providing their insights, support, and feedback. Their involvement helps ensure that the change is aligned with the organization's goals and meets the needs of all affected parties. Question 4. A critical infrastructure facility is concerned about the potential for physical attacks that could disrupt operations. Which type of system requires the most stringent physical security measures to prevent tampering? A, ICS, B, PLC, C, IoT, or D, ICMP? Okay, let me reread this. Which type of system requires the most stringent physical security measures to prevent tampering? Okay, so I would say that if you know the acronyms, this is a pretty easy question. And just a heads up, by the way, I know I've said this before, but your test will be full of acronyms and you will need to learn all of them. And you can find them in the exam objective PDF in the description of the video at the very bottom. Anyways, so what do these acronyms mean? For A, ICS, that's going to be the Industrial Control System. For B, PLC, I think that's something to do with logic boards. But regardless, it's not on the exam objectives, and trust me, I've gone through them a lot. And then for C, IoT, that's going to be Internet of Things. And then for D, ICMP, that's going to be Internal Control Message Protocol. So out of all these, the only one that makes the most sense to me is going to be A, ICS. And these are systems that control important infrastructure. Think of it as in the government. They control things like power plants and water treatment systems and plants like that. So they're pretty important and require a lot of physical security here. Going to go with A. ICS systems require the most stringent physical security measures due to their critical role in infrastructure operations. Protecting these systems from physical attacks is essential for ensuring public safety and economic stability. Question 5. A security analyst is assessing the potential financial impact of a security breach. They want to calculate the ALE. Which formula should they use? A, RPO plus MTTR. B, SLE divided by ARO. C, SLE minus ARO. Or D, SLE times ARO. All right, so ALE, so also known as ALE, that stands for Annualized Loss Expectancy. And so we're trying to find the equation that equals the ALE, so ALE. I'm going to rule out A, RPO plus MTTR. RPO is recovery point objective and MTTR is mean time to repair. And they have nothing to do with these equations. So I'm going to rule that out. So let's look at B, C, and D. So SLE, that's going to be single loss expectancy. And ARO is annualized rate of occurrence. So single loss expectancy, that's going to like measure the expected loss from a single, let's just say, occurrence of a threat. We can narrow it down to that. It could be other things, but that's the easy way of understanding it. And then the ARO, so annualized rate of occurrence, is the estimation on how many times the threat is expected to happen in a year. So to get the annualized loss expectancy, you take the single loss expectancy times the annual rate of occurrence. And that would be D, going with D. The formula AL equals single loss expectancy times annual rate of occurrence is used to calculate the annual loss expectancy, which is a key metric for risk assessment and decision making. Question 6. A company is involved in a lawsuit and needs to collect and review all relevant digital evidence. Which process would they use to gather and analyze emails, documents, and other electronic records? A. Risk assessment. B. Attestation. C. E-discovery. Or D. Due diligence. Okay, so gather and analyze emails, documents, and other electronic records. Okay, I want to point something out here. Mention emails, documents, electronic records, and that's kind of important to note for this one. I'm going to rule out due diligence and risk assessment right off the bat. They don't make any sense here. So let's look at B and C. For B, attestation, I mean, that's going to be like provide assurance that a document or a report is accurate. So that's important as far as accuracy. And it's kind of similar to what the process is describing the scenario, but the definition of what's happening here is called e-discovery. It's like electronic discovery. And that's going to be, collecting and reviewing anything that is digital that they're going to use in evidence. It's called e-discovery. So going with C. E-discovery is a legal process for identifying, collecting, preserving, processing, and producing electronically stored information, also known as ESI, in response to a discovery request in litigation. Question 7. A company wants to protect user privacy by removing PII from their data. Which technique is challenging because it requires completely removing all PII, making it difficult to reverse the process? A. Anonymization. B. Data minimization. C. Data masking. Or D. Tokenization. All right. So a bit of a tricky question here. I would say, they're all similar, right? And they all have to do with either reducing or eliminating potentially PII. But which one of these methods would completely remove the PII? And that's key here. And it's important to know that it says removing and not altering. So that rules out some answers here already. But with that said, only one of these would traditionally remove it completely, and that would be anonymization. And that is like the process where data is removed, making it impossible to link to an individual. So just as the scenario in question stating, the other options can technically still be linked to an individual. So I'm going to go with A. Anonymization is the most challenging technique for removing PII from data because it requires the complete removal of all identifying information. While other techniques can also protect privacy, anonymization offers the highest level of protection. Question 8. While working on their computer, a user discovers a suspicious device connected between their keyboard and the USB port on their machine. What type of security threat does this device most likely pose? A. Botnet, B. Ransomware, C. Keylogger, or D. Trojan horse? All right, pretty straightforward question, I would say here. So let's take a look. A suspicious device connected between their keyboard and the USB port on their machine. Which one of these security threats would connect to a keyboard? And out of all of these, there's only one good option for that, and that would be C, a keylogger. And a keylogger, which is on the exam objectives, if you're unsure what that is, that's designed to record keyboard strokes. So if somebody types in their password, it's going to record them typing in their password. So that's what a keylogger is. But going with C. A keylogger is a device or software designed to record keystrokes from a keyboard. If a physical device is found between the keyboard and the USB port, it is most likely a hardware keylogger. That is true. I didn't mention that there are software keyloggers as well. Question 9. A company decides not to implement any additional measures for a specific risk, choosing instead to live with the potential consequences. This decision is most closely associated with which of the following concepts? A, control risk, B, inherent risk, C, risk appetite, or D, residual risk. All right, I do want to point out that you are going to need to know the different types of risks. So it's very important to know them. If you're not comfortable with them, you should definitely read up on them. Let's go ahead and look at the question here. So the decision was to not implement any measures for a risk, okay? That's key. But let's go ahead and go through them and what each one means. So for A, control risk, that's not going to be related to any decision to accept a risk. So ruling out that. You have B, inherent risk, and that's going to be the level of risk before any controls are applied, okay? And then for C, risk appetite. Risk appetite is the amount of risk the organization is going to be willing to accept. So far, that's the best answer. And you have D, residual risk, and that's the risk that remains after a control is implemented. So it didn't say anything about implementing the control and then dealing with it, because that would be residual risk. Scenario specifically states that they are just going to live with the risk and the potential consequences. And that's going to be risk appetite. Going with C. Risk appetite refers to the level of risk an organization is willing to accept in pursuit of its objectives. When an organization decides to accept a risk and not take further action, it aligns with its predetermined risk appetite. Question 10, halfway through. A company wants to establish secure communication on its website, requiring an entity to issue certificates that authenticate its server to users. Which entity is responsible for providing these certificates? A, CSAB, B, RA, C, CA, or D, TLS? All right, so a big key to this question here is understanding that it's asking which entity issues certificates. And that's going to be key here. So let's go ahead and go through them. A CASB or CSAB, however you want to say it, that's going to stand for Cloud Access Security Broker, and that's going to handle policies for like accessing like different cloud services. B, RA, that's going to be a registration authority, and that helps verify the identity of entities, but it does not issue certificates. And then you have, well, let's go ahead and jump to D here. So D, you have TLS, and that's going to be transport layer security. And that's going to be more of like a cryptographic protocol for like secure messages or communications. But now that leaves us with C, a CA, and that's going to be a certificate authority. And a certificate authority is a third party that issues certificates. So going with C. A CA is a trusted third party responsible for issuing digital certificates, which are used to authenticate the identity of web servers and establish secure connections. Question 11. A network security team has implemented an IDS to help improve the security posture for a client. Due to costs, the client wants to better understand the main purpose of an IDS. What is the main function of this system? A. Alerting. B. Reporting. C. Scanning. D. Quarantining. Interestingly enough, an IDS technically does all of these. You can argue it doesn't quarantine. That would be an IPS, but it does all of these except for quarantine. But even though an IDS, it does scanning, it does reporting, it does alerting, the main purpose of an intrusion detection system is to alert. It's going to generate an alert based on signatures or predefined rules, and then sends that off to the security team to investigate and respond. But while an IDS does most of these except for quarantine, I would say that the main function of an IDS is to alert, because if it scans, it scans. What's the point if it doesn't alert, right? So I'm going to go with A, alerting. Kind of a tricky question. Okay. The primary function of an IDS is to alert administrators when it detects potentially malicious activities on the network. The system analyzes network traffic and matches it against known threat signatures or behaviors. Question 12. To ensure effective security governance, a company must adapt swiftly to address emerging challenges and opportunities on a global scale. For example, technology firms need to stay updated with the latest advancements in software development. Which aspect of corporate governance is most relevant to this situation? A, local, B, industry, C, legal, or D, regulatory? Let me look at this one more time. Make sure I don't miss any of the keywords here. Okay, so let's take a look here. I would say kind of a tough question, I would say, but the key understanding that is that the scenario isn't pointing towards specific types of governance that would make the answer. That makes sense. But it says technology firms need to stay updated with the latest advancements in software development. I would say that that's the key to getting this one right. And I would say that it's referring to industry governance. Kind of a weirdly worded one, and I might get this one wrong, but I would go with B, industry, because it's pointing more towards staying updated with the latest advancements in software development. I would say industry, B. Okay. This aspect of corporate governance focuses on how well a company responds to changes, trends, and demands within its specific sector. In this scenario, technology firms need to stay up to date with advancements in software development, which directly influences their ability to remain competitive and innovative in the tech industry. Question 13. A network administrator is configuring security settings for a company's firewall to control which traffic is allowed or blocked. The administrator needs to establish specific rules that will determine whether certain actions are permitted or denied. What tool does the firewall use to enforce these rules? All right, so a lot of keywords here, and I would say that it's a pretty straightforward question. I think out of all four of these options, if you just read the question, you'd be able to get the answer. But let's go ahead and look at some of the acronyms here and go through it. So for A, FIM, that's going to be file integrity monitoring. And that's going to monitor changes to files and file configurations. You have access lists and honeypots. Those aren't acronyms, but D is an acronym. And that's going to be endpoint detection and response. And these are tools that are used to monitor and respond to threats on like endpoints such as computers and servers, right? But let's look at C, honeypots. And like we had in our question earlier, that's going to be a deceptive type of decoy system. It's used to lure attackers that, more so help study their attack methods. But we talked about that in another question earlier. Doesn't make sense for this question. But you have B, access lists. And when I mentioned that you can just read the question to get the answer out of these possible answers, an access list and access rules and traffic rules, those are used to allow or deny traffic on a firewall. That's how it is. So going with B, access lists. Firewalls use ACLs, so access lists, to determine whether to permit or deny traffic based on a set of predefined rules. These lists specify which IP addresses, protocols, or ports are allowed or blocked, making them a fundamental tool in controlling network traffic and enhancing security. Question 14. A system administrator managing a file server wants to ensure that they have a complete copy of all data every day, allowing them to restore an entire system from a single backup if necessary. Wow, that's expensive. What type of backup should they perform? A, full, B, incremental, C, differential, or D, snapshots. I used to get confused by the different backup methods, but let's go ahead and take a look here. But the key, I want to point something out. The key here is allowing them to restore the entire system from a single backup if necessary. And it also says a complete copy of all data every day. Okay. Right away, I'm going to say, although not cost effective whatsoever, the best answer given the scenario and the question is going to be A, a full backup. But let's go ahead and take a look at the other ones here. So incremental, B. Now that's only going to back up data that has changed since the last backup. Okay. Then you have C, differential. And that only backs up data that has changed since the last full backup. And then D, snapshots. That's going to be more to capture like the state of a system or a computer at a given time, more so popular with like a virtual machine. But the best answer I would say is A. A full backup involves copying all the data on the file server every time the backup is run. This ensures that the administrator has a complete set of data in a single backup, which can be used to fully restore the server if needed. Question 15. A user is experiencing frequent crashes with a particular piece of software on their computer. To diagnose the issue, which type of log should be examined? A, network logs, B, application logs, C, firewall logs, or D, endpoint logs. Okay. So different types of logs. There's a good chance actually that a question like this, similar to this one, will be on your exam. So it is important to understand the different types of logs, and especially if you plan on going from the Security Plus to the CYSA Plus. A lot of log type questions, but let's go ahead and go through the different types of logs here briefly. For network logs, that's going to show things like network connection and bandwidth usage. For application logs, this will show different applications or software logs. For firewall logs, this is going to monitor and record traffic that is allowed or blocked by the firewall. And then you have D, endpoint logs, and that's going to show like security related logs or performance logs on a given endpoint. But the key to this question is in the scenario where it says a particular piece of software on their computer. And to me, I don't know about you, but this is indicating more towards an application. So I'm going to go with B, application logs. Application logs are the most appropriate choice for diagnosing software crashes as they contain detailed records of the application's operations, errors, and other relevant events. Question 16. An administrator is preparing the certificate set up for several new public-facing websites. They plan to use the same root domain across multiple subdomains, each hosting different applications. Which of the following would be the most suitable choice for this scenario? A. Multiple certificates. B. Root CA certificate. C. Wildcard. Or D. Self-signed certificate. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick look at this scenario again to get to see the best type of certificate that would need to be issued. So they are several new public-facing websites. So I'm ruling out self-signed certificate. They plan to use the same root domain across multiple subdomains, each hosting different applications. Okay. All right, so the way I look at this scenario is the administrator is wanting to use different subdomains in front of the main domain. They're public-facing websites, so they're not going to be self-signed certificates. So D's ruled out. And what it looks like what they're trying to do here is like multiple websites that have like the same root website. So let me give you an example here. So you have www.apple.com. But it's looking for are different subdomains such as like www.support.apple.com, right? And the support part in that is going to be the subdomain. And in this case, the best answer for that and the exact, reference to that is going to be C, wildcard. And a wildcard, they're subdomains in front of a root domain, right? So just as the question scenario is asking. I'm assuming that's what it's referring to, since the other options don't really make sense in the given scenario. But going with C, wildcard. A wildcard certificate is specifically designed to secure a root domain in all of its subdomains. For example, if the root domain is example.com, a wildcard certificate can secure www.example.com or mail.example.com, app.example.com, and any other subdomains. Yep. So just like my apple.com reference with support.apple.com. Question 17. A company wants to ensure that its employees are equipped with the knowledge and skills needed to handle potential security incidents. As part of their incident response strategy, they are focusing on providing comprehensive training to their staff. Which stage of the incident response process does this training primarily relate to? A. Recovery. B. Preparation. C. Lessons learned. Or D. Containment. All right. So the incident response phases. And it's really important to understand the incident response phases, by the way. You'll most likely get questions on it, but it's really important to understand them in the way that CompTIA wants you to learn them. That's key. But when it comes to the training, while you can technically learn quite a bit and train quite a bit in each different phase, there is a phase that's technically designed to teach and train, and that's going to be the preparation phase. That's going to encompass, the training and readiness needed to ensure that employees can effectively respond to incidents. So out of all of these, the best one is going to be B, preparation. That's going to start that training process in the event that the incident goes live. This phase involves establishing the foundational elements required for an effective incident response. It includes creating policies, setting up tools, and training employees to handle potential security incidents. Question 18. Recent application patches to the servers have led to multiple outages, causing frustration among analysts who are tired of the time-consuming restoration process following a failed patch. They are looking for a reliable method to prevent these issues from continuing. Which of the following approaches should they adopt? A. Testing the patches in an isolated, controlled environment. B. Restoring system images taken before the patches immediately when an issue occurs. C. Applying the patches to a small group of production servers. Or D. Applying the patches to each server individually. All right, so let's look at the scenario here. So the issue is whenever the analyst implements a patch, issues pop up. Okay. The best thing to do is to test each patch in an isolated, controlled environment before pushing the patch to production. And this is a very, very common thing in IT. Putting patches to test before implementing to a production environment. There's usually production environment and dev environment, and they're usually the same thing. Just one isn't front facing, the other is. But I'm going with A, testing the patches in an isolated, controlled environment. Testing the patches in a sandboxed or isolated environment before deploying them to production servers is the best practice. This allows administrators to detect and fix any issues in a controlled setting, minimizing the risk of outages when the patches are rolled out to the live servers. Question 19. A company recently discovered that a security breach occurred due to the exploitation of a trusted partner's systems. The attackers used this relationship to gain unauthorized access to the company's network. Which of the following attack methods likely enabled this breach? A. External media devices. B. Phishing emails. C. Insider threat. Or D. Compromised supply chain. This is kind of a tough one, I would say. And this is a very common occurrence, by the way. So something I want to point out here is that a breach occurred due to the exploitation of a trusted partner's systems. And two, it also specifically says the relationship. There's a relationship between them. So with that said, think about it, right? Like which one of these potential answers here has anything to do with a trusted partner and also a relationship? It might be a little confusing, but the answer I would say would be D, compromised supply chain. I mean, a trusted partner in the supply chain was compromised, which led to the security breach. It could be B, phishing emails, but with the mention of a trusted partner systems and also a relationship, I would say that the best answer would be D, compromised supply chain. Now it could also be, let me reread this real quick. Sorry, this is taking a minute. Okay, I was thinking that a phishing email, they would count that as, like social engineering. And that's where it mentioned a relationship to gain unauthorized access. However, with it mentioning exploitation of a trusted partner's systems, a compromised supply chain, that would have both trusted partner systems and a relationship with them. So that's why I'm going to go with D instead of phishing. Could be wrong, but I'm going to go with compromised supply chain. A compromised supply chain is a common attack vector where attackers exploit the trust relationships between a company and its third-party vendors or partners. Question 20. During an audit of a computer system, the security team is reviewing the moment when the system actually uses a resource for which it has been granted access. The moment is crucial for understanding how permissions are enforced. Which term best describes this moment? A, time of use. B, target of evaluation. C, time of check. Or D, out of cycle. All right. I would say it's an easy question, kind of hard to explain though. So the answer it's asking for is the one that would record a moment in time. So think about it like that, okay? And if you look at the exam objectives, I would say that the best one that refers to recording a moment of time would be time of use. And that's just when the exact moment a system or a user actually accesses a resource. Okay, so that's time of use. Like target evaluation isn't on the security plus exam objectives. I'm pretty confident it's not on there. Gone through it a lot. Time of check is related to like race conditions, and out of cycle is like an audit or review that is conducted outside of the normal schedule. So it doesn't really make sense for this one. So I'm going to go with A, time of use. The term time of use refers to a specific moment when a system or process actually accesses a resource it has been authorized to use. All right. Well, that completes the 20 questions for part 4. If you're still here, I really appreciate you watching these videos. Thanks for the feedback. I get a lot of feedback on this. If you enjoy these types of videos, by the way, don't forget to subscribe. I have loads of other videos planned out that are coming out very soon, and they're actually very similar to CompTIA related content, but they're not necessarily practice exams. So that's a little bit of a teaser there. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you plan on taking the exam. I love hearing from people who pass. A lot of people comment saying they passed, and I just love reading it. Whether that's because of me or because they passed, I just like hearing it. So here is an early congratulations to you passing your exam. Anyway, thank you and see you next time.